Hi, like introduced, my name's Carl. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Adeption, and I'm absolutely passionate about leadership and leadership development. To explain why, I've got to tell you a little bit about where I'm from. And this photo I took a couple of years ago. These are my kids, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. Now, some of you may be thinking, what's he talking about? That accent's fairly strong, and I can't quite understand what he's saying. So with that, I've got Tim here in the back's got some chocolates for the first person who can correctly guess where this accent's from. Does somebody just want to call it out?
New Zealand.
Ah, excellent. Thank you very much. You're a great crowd. Last time I asked that question, I got South African, English, Australian, and then finally Kiwi. So the point is, though, is I'm actually from here. I'm living in the Bay Area at the moment. I've been in the US for 6 of the last 12 years. I know that because my son's now 12. And we all co-inhabit this planet. And as we move towards 9 billion people, there are a lot of challenges that we face. I'm also an optimist, though. I firmly believe that all of those challenges we face, we have the technical means to solve them. We can coexist with each other, and we can coexist with everything else that we share this planet with. The missing ingredient is leadership. It is being able to lead into those uncertain times, being able to step into uncertainty and do sometimes unpopular things, but also being able to interact with other humans and find common ground. That's the challenge that we face. And as those kids grow up, that's the challenge that I'm trying to do my little wee bit to make a difference in. And I just love where we are here at the moment at the Computer History Museum in the middle of Silicon Valley, because I think it represents a really pivotal time in history, which also represents an amazing opportunity for us all. I started my career as an engineer, and I was building software systems that were transforming things from mainframes to client-server-based technology. There was this incredible thing that we had compute power on our desktops, and it allowed us to do new things that we couldn't do before, make new, more functional, useful software. And some of the biggest, most powerful companies in the world grew from this paradigm. And then about 20 years ago, that paradigm changed. We moved that compute into the cloud, that power into the cloud, and a whole new breed of organizations, which are today some of the most powerful and influential organizations in the world, founded pretty close to here, have grown to success through this model of renting software rather than owning it. The idea that you don't actually have to own it, it can live on the cloud. And that has enabled a lot of things, and a lot of organizations have got very good at optimizing for this. And then today, we see something entirely different. With AI, particularly generative AI, there is a new era of possibility coming. And it is really impacting the way that work is done and the jobs that we all have in a totally profound way. I'm sure that as people who are interested in investing in future human talent, you're grappling with challenges that this is bringing about. Salesforce is one of our big clients at the moment, and they have a term, agentification. And I had to listen to it a couple of times. It's like agentification. It's like software is now doing work for us. And that is an attribute of what we're facing. So when we talk about transformation where there is no playbook, the previous rules about leadership and management and what you do don't apply, because we've got a completely different type of workforce that we're facing into at the moment. So with that, I'd like to turn this to you. On your tables, you've each got one of these little cards, and there's 3 prompts on it. Be conscious, be curious, be better. Just under the be conscious, reflect for a moment and think about a challenge that you are facing, something that in your role, or an opportunity, a priority that you have, you'd love to make some progress on, something that is truly important to you. So as you think about that, make a note of it. I'd like you to view the things that I unpack in the next 15 minutes through the lens of that challenge, because this could be an interesting intellectual conversation, and I can share a few things and you can go, yeah, that's nice. But if we turn that into something that you can do something with tomorrow or next week because it's relevant to your challenge, then we're really going to the races. We really start changing things. So anchor what I'm saying. I'm going to talk about adaptive leadership. I'm going to talk about the impact of mindsets on how we lead. And I'm also going to talk about this learning in the flow of work methodology, B3. And there might be some nuggets in those things that you can use that will help your challenge right now. So I'd love you all to walk out with some real value for something that's important to you. Now, I mentioned adaptive leadership, which I think is so the time. They say when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And at the moment, everything is looking like adaptive leadership. And I saw a cartoon a couple of years ago, and it went like this. We think success is this. If I do this, then I'm going to get this, and it's a nice linear path. I've got kids, and they believe passionately that if they do the right things in life and they learn enough, they're going to be successful. Yet, I've got a few grey hairs, and success actually looks like this. And I'm seeing a lot of responses here. We all know that sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes it's a step sideways, a step the other way. But if you do it right, eventually you will make progress. And that's one of the best definitions I've seen for this distinction between technical challenges, which I said earlier, we've got the means to make these happen, and then the adaptive challenges, where we're dealing with things that are inherently unstable and haven't been done before. One of the greatest things we can give the leaders and the people that we serve in our field is letting them know about the distinction between these two things, and there are different approaches for different types of challenges. Just taking that a little bit further, technical challenges, we have known solutions. We can apply best practice, and really the job of leadership is to apply management. It is find the expertise, give it the resources, and get that problem solved. Technical challenges don't mean they're easy. They can be very hard. Heart surgery is a technical challenge. Yet we as humans know how to do heart surgery. And if you train somebody enough, they can do it. On the other hand, we have adaptive challenges. Adaptive challenges are where there are no known solutions. In fact, the solution and the problem are intertwined. Experimentation and learning are required from everyone. There's a great saying in this field that is, the people with the problem are the problem and are the solution. If you've got a whack-a-mole situation where everything you solve seems to create another undesired effect, you're probably dealing with an adaptive challenge. And what happens here is change happens at the system level. No one person owns an adaptive challenge. This presentation is an example of an adaptive challenge. I could technically nail everything. I'm probably not going to, but I really could. Whether you get anything out of it or not, though, is really up to you, not just you, your stakeholders, the family that you walk into when you get home tonight, the job environment that you're in when you get back into work tomorrow. There are lots and lots of different actors and interested parties. Now, one of the things that causes the most failure in organisations, especially in times of change, is that we treat adaptive situations as if they were technical. We create big project plans, we deploy a lot of budget, and we say, if I do this, then I'll get that result. And we actually don't know. And it's why 80% of change efforts fail, and it's super relevant right now. What we need to do is learn and experiment, and that's the job to be done, not treat it like a project to be managed. Now, the other interesting thing is that humans are very, very variable. I can follow a feedback mechanism that I've been taught and get a great result with somebody, and then I can do exactly the same thing with another person, and they get triggered and blow up in my face. And I'm like, they're crazy. The thing is, people are adaptive as well. We're very, very complex, and we can't predict the outcomes with any great certainty. So if you work with people and you're working in novel situations, you're dealing with adaptive challenges. And this distinction is really, really important. And it's not just anecdotal. So in our business, we have a technology platform, and we ask people reflective questions. And before they start, we often ask them a thing about, say, tell us about a time where you've had a change effort that's really failed, hasn't gone well, and tell us about the approach you used. And they write. And then we ask them to reflect on something that they've done really well and went really successfully, and they write, and they tell us what they did. And the difference is stark. We've got an algorithm that analyzes people's language, the way they use language. And when people use technical problem solving for adaptive challenges, which is change, it doesn't work. When they use adaptive type methodologies, bringing people along, capturing hearts and minds, it works. So it's a really big idea, and I could move into a stage now of telling you all about some things that you can do to better manage adaptive challenges or for your stakeholders too. Before we do that though, one of the biggest things we can do is just like have a look at your challenge now. If you think it is predominantly technical, put your hand up. Who's got mainly, normally we get a few. Okay, what about mainly adaptive, the challenge that you've got there? Okay, so lots. So we're dealing with lots of adaptive challenges. What about a bit of both? What about somewhere in the middle? Yeah, okay, bundled. Often what happens is we are dealing with multi-dimensional challenges, and leaders are just all at sea because they can't distinguish between them. Unbundling is one of the biggest moves you can make. So literally knowing that there is this distinction between the type of work that you need to do, pulling out the technical elements, finding the experts, delegating to do those, and then leaning into the adaptive work can really free up a lot of capacity. And it really opens people's minds in a time of change. Another thing we can talk about, and you can go to Harvard and do courses on adaptive leadership, and you'll learn a whole lot of skills and techniques, and they are brilliant. They're really, really brilliant. There are tools, there are competencies, there are techniques. Over the last 10 years, what we've found, and what I've personally found, is that they're intellectually interesting, and they make no progress against an adaptive challenge. And one of the reasons is because almost by nature, by definition, if you can teach somebody something, it's not going to work in an adaptive challenge because you're using prior knowledge and you're using prior expertise to try and deal with a novel situation. And so that led us to thinking about how really do we unlock this potential? How do we let people get closer to the capacities that we have? And the good news is that mindsets, turning the mirror back inward, can really help us make progress on adaptive challenges. Understanding the unconscious mindsets that we're bringing to a situation and deploying those deliberately into that situation is like a sledgehammer compared to tools and techniques. And it really makes a difference against those challenges. I'll break this down with a quote and then an example. It's one of my favorite quotes, in that we see the world as we are, not it as it is. And we're always projecting ourselves onto the world. And often we've got to success in life. In Silicon Valley here, the last 20 years, a bunch of things have worked beautifully. That's what we want to see when we see the future situations, rather than seeing them as they are. So understanding how we form our views of the world can really help us make progress on these adaptive challenges. So to make this kind of really simple, when something happens, we get some data in, we have a response, we think about what we need to do, and we get a result. That's kind of like what we think basically happens in an interaction. Whereas neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists have kind of seen and worked out over the last 15, 20 years that that's not what happens inside here. What happens inside here is the data comes in, it is filtered through the mindset that we have, and that filtering then creates an emotion, and that emotion drives what we do behaviorally, and then we get a result. So by focusing on telling people what to do, we're missing most of the iceberg, and that's why it's very difficult to do behavior change. Now, the good thing is the result then feeds the mindset, so we've got some things we can play with and really deliberately work on here. So when we put it in the space of leadership in times of change, let's say you're in a Silicon Valley organization and we've got declining sales. Here, one of the leadership mindsets we see often is an expert mindset. It's about product, it's about perfection, it is about having the best thing. Now, this mindset would say the product's not good enough, we need to make it better, get rid of the bugs, hire better engineers, make a better product. That might be right. There's also an unconscious achiever level mindset, which is all about goals and attainment and hitting the numbers. This person would feel like, we're not focused enough. We need more training. We need clearer goals, and we need more salespeople. Could be the right answer. There's another mindset that we see often, which is called a redefining mindset, that likes to ask a lot of questions. Can be really, really problematic when everyone's just gunning through technical challenges. But these questions might say, we need to have another strategy. And then there is another mindset, a transforming mindset, which brings on systems awareness. Might be thinking, there's an opportunity for here not to be a victim of the market, but to make the market. We can change things. Maybe we move from subscription pricing to consumption pricing. That's going to force us to change our strategy, change our team, and change our product. But we can really get some progress moving now. Now, all of these things are happening to us unconsciously, so you can see the benefit of actually being aware of it. These mindsets are very useful in adaptive situations. And these mindsets are very useful in technical situations. So letting people know that this is what's going on behind the hood can really help. And the great thing is, in the last 30 years, there have been a number of assessments developed that can identify the predominant mindset we're coming at the world from. They're fascinating assessments. You complete sentence stems, and the way you use language gives a clue into how you're making sense of the world and what you value. We've built our own. It's scored by AI, so the price of it's come down a lot, and it's very fast to deploy. And we've seen some fascinating things with it because it opens up these really interesting things. You can take your situation that somebody faces, allow somebody to see that situation through the mindset they've unconsciously got, but also practice putting on other glasses to see it through how other people may see it. And generally what happens is there's some low-hanging fruit. There's some things that they see that were hiding in plain sight right in front of them that they can move forward with. So that's the benefit of being able to be aware of mindsets. So I'll just pause for a moment here and give you a minute just to take that little sheet, look back at your issue. Is there anything that I've shared around adaptive and technical leadership or mindsets that you might think could apply to your particular challenge? So just take a moment to reflect on that. Is there something that you can take forward from these ideas that would help with you and your challenge? Now, what happens when you give somebody this feedback and they understand the power of mindsets and they have a window into their own mindset, they generally ask us, well, what do I do? How do I grow? How do I grow range? How do I actually have access to more of these mindsets to see the world through, especially at times like now? And it's relatively simple. It's just not what most of us do. So we develop mindsets, and this is just repeating what I said earlier, through having experiences. When we have an experience, we create stories. Good stories or bad stories, depending on what happens from the experience. And those stories consolidate into our mindsets. And that's pretty much what we're left with. Now, if we add deliberate reflection, we tell other people about what's happening, we can even edit those stories that we're telling and have a heightened level of awareness, we can speed this loop up. And we can deliberately form new mindsets, and we can speed up the access to more range of mindsets that we have. And that's kind of where we've started from with our methodology about how we do leadership development. And it's something that's accessible to all of you because it's ridiculously simple. And it's a learning in the flow of work methodology that is just a simple habit-formed framework. Ask people to be conscious about the current environment they're in. If anyone here drove in here today and kind of turned up and thought, whoa, I'm not sure how I got here, you were in what's called waking sleep. We spend a lot of our waking life in waking sleep. We're unconscious about what we're doing. It's our brain's mechanism to make sure that we preserve valuable energy, but it's terrible in adaptive situations. It's terrible in times of transformation. Imagine walking through a dangerous jungle on autopilot. You just don't do it. You're heightened, you're aware, you're fully awake, you're conscious. That's what you want to get your leaders to do. Ask them what's important to you, what's working, what's not working. What that then does is open up the neurons and the awareness to take in the content and the lessons, the tools, the techniques that you've got. And they can form those into new ones that suit them and their situation. So this is where the formal learning happens, but it happens in an entirely different way. And then none of that matters for anything if they don't take an experiment. Because you are making the future as much as you are a victim of the future when you're in an adaptive situation. So you want people to actually plan an experiment. It's like an agile sprint for leadership development. What are you going to do differently with your leadership in the next 2 weeks? And they actually commit to doing that. And as a result, they start to get different feedback and different results. We've been doing this for a while, and it really works. It's worth trying. Over 80,000 people have been through this methodology, planned over 500,000 deliberate actions that they've then reflected on. Half of those we've captured digitally, which powers our own AI now to help people formulate future actions. They really like it because they're working on their work, not on what we want them to be working on. Mindset range impacts 360-degree evaluation scores. Other people notice that they've got more ability to empathise. I may be sitting and redefining, but my team is an expert mindset. So just knowing that can really help me work with them and meet them where they are. Experiences where you get people into these deliberate B3 loops build mindset range. We've measured that. It really works far faster than theorists thought beforehand. And this is my favorite one, is leaders just experience less frustration and less struggle because they're making the future as much as they're a victim of the future, which is the reality of our role as humans. You know, these technical challenges are getting outsourced and taken away by automation and AI, and maybe they should, because the uniquely human thing that we've got that we can bring to the world is dealing with these novel situations. So with that, again, just take a moment and think of your little B3 sheet. What action can you take? What might you be able to do differently tomorrow with your challenge that you're facing? How can you apply the idea of the difference between adaptive challenges and technical challenges, the idea, the impact that mindsets have, and even a very, very simple methodology which encourages you to experiment. Share your experiment and learn from others. I won't get you to do it right now, but as you leave this room, a little hack is that if you share your experiment or your key insight with somebody at your table, you're 40% more likely to do it, and you'll start that consolidation process of a new mindset faster and sooner. So you'll get a lot more benefit from this 20 minutes and the rest of this time here. So finishing off, just got a couple of messages. One, we were running a workshop with the Google School of Leadership a couple of years ago, and it was about trying to define the skills that future leaders needed, and we were going nowhere. And this is where we ended up. The only skill that really matters is the skill to develop skills. B3 is a way to help you develop skills in the future. I also think that the disruption that we're facing now is not a doom and gloom situation. It's actually a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create the type of leadership we need in this world. It's an opportunity for people to do the hard work and to step into leadership at scale that will develop a whole generation of people that can make sure this planet is more sustainable and that we do move forward in the way that I certainly hope it does. We're not just saying this, we're putting together an open program which is free for 50 people from across the world, and I'd love you all here to nominate a person or two to be part of this experience. So nominations open April 1st. There's an expression of interest with that QR code that you can take there. Tim and I are outside after this talk. There's a break. You can come and say that you want to be interested in it. Please nominate somebody to come along to it. There's no cost, because we really do believe in the future, and we really do believe in equipping leaders of the future with this sort of work so we can be part of the solution as well. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being interested in this space. We can't do it alone, and I'm deeply passionate about communities like this. And I hope you go and take that action. Thank you.